Florida Republicans did not pick a fight with Disney, but they sure seem to be finishing a fight with Disney. You know about the Florida Parental Rights and Education Bill. This says that you can't preach transgenderism to 5-year-olds. Seems pretty uncontroversial to me, but Disney employees and eventually Disney leadership took issue with this law. They believe that your 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds and kindergartners and preschoolers and everybody else should be taught transgenderism and all sorts of sexual ideologies. And so they are vowing to fight Florida Republicans and fight these sorts of bills around the country as well. So Florida Republicans have proposed to remove the special tax exemptions that Disney has, really elevating this fight and saying, no, woke corporations are not going to push us around. We've got breaking news now. This law has just passed the Florida legislature. Here to tell us about it is the Speaker of the Florida House. That would be Chris Sprowls. Speaker Sprowls, thank you so much for coming on.
Michael, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
This is so incredibly encouraging. Finally, Republicans growing a spine, not just to fight back against elected Democrats, but to fight back against woke corporations, notably Disney, which is a kids company, a family company. It's supposed to be protecting kids and giving us good entertainment to kids, not preaching radical sexual ideologies. What does this law do?
Well, thanks for the question. Look, this law is really, it's an approach to take Disney and treat them like every other company in the state. You know, you and I have had the opportunity to talk before about what they did on the bill to protect kids in school from, radical ideology when they're 5 and 6 years old and they're not having to learn about transgenderism. But, Disney, of course, came out and said they didn't support that law. And then people started asking the question, well, why is Disney, first of all, why they have that position? It's super bizarre. But isn't Disney granted, special privileges on behalf of the taxpayer? And now they're weaponizing those privileges as a way to mislead the public about what the law is. So the Reedy Creek taxing district, and there's actually 6 districts that are like this, that they were created before the 1968 Florida Constitution, which modified all these things and gives them special power. Basically, they're allowed to operate what amounts to their own government, their own city. They tax themselves. They build their own roads. They have their own fire department. All of this they do themselves outside the confines of any sort of elected representation in the community or elected officials or accountability from the public. So when this happened, Michael, and people started raising those issues, we went back and looked at it, realized there's only 6 entities like this. None of them are corporations except for Disney. One of them is a law library, a mosquito control district, and then, of course, Disney, who's using that opportunity as a way to take millions of dollars and then, of course, recently, mislead the public. So, Governor DeSantis, the House and Senate have now taken it upon ourselves to correct that error from the 1968 Constitution and to make sure that Disney is treated like everybody else.
So this special tax district that we're talking about, which basically gives Disney its own government in the territory that it occupies, this goes back 60 years. This is a pretty big deal if you're upending this now. I think a lot of people, many liberals and a lot of conservatives too, believed that the Florida Republicans would sort of back down, come to some compromise with Disney. And that's not what's happening. This seems to constitute an escalation of the fight of Florida Republicans with the Disney Corporation.
People can view that however they want. I can tell you that, when we look at these things, when we find this and we say to ourselves, gosh, why are we allowing any corporation, whether it's Disney, which of course is, synonymous with Florida, or any other corporation or company, takes taxpayer power, escape accountability, and then weaponize that and to use their platform and mislead the public on items of public policy. And we shouldn't do that with anyone. These special taxing districts, Michael, there are other ones. None of them have the ability to do what Disney can do. Disney could construct their own nuclear power plant under current law in the state of Florida. So, these are things that haven't been looked at since 1968. After this incident, we went back, we looked at it, and we're saying, look, we're not going to allow this thing without accountability to weaponize this against us. What I would say to you, too, is while this is, I think, unique because it's Disney, the reality is we've had a history of doing this. Last year, when we were doing the Protect Women's Sports bill, the NCAA came out and they said, well, if, the Florida legislature passes this bill to protect women's sports, we're going to boycott sporting events in the state of Florida. And I think that was their way of realizing, look, Florida, sports is important to us like it is in many other states across the country. But we didn't back down. Not only do we pass the bill, but we passed a provision off the House floor that got into that law which said that if you boycott us, we boycott you. So no university, the University of Florida, Florida State, there can't be members of the NCAA if you decide to boycott the state of Florida. And you know what happened, Michael? They didn't boycott a single sporting event in the state of Florida. So I think we've got a history here now of punching back when these kinds of things happen. And we find that when you do that, you're all the better for it.
The NCAA example is really important because there have been other Republican governors who have been afraid of the NCAA. And when push comes to shove, they say, look, boys should not compete in girls' sports. It's not fair. It's weird. It's wrong. But you get the phone call from the corporate donor. You get the phone call from the NCAA. And when push comes to shove, they won't sign the bill. They'll back down. They cave into that corporate pressure. I love what you're doing. I think it's phenomenal. I could not possibly be more enthusiastic about it. But we should not pretend that there are not consequences here. You are opening yourself up to huge political liabilities. It takes a lot of political courage to do what you and your colleagues in the Florida legislature and Governor DeSantis are doing right now, because Disney is a very powerful corporation with lots and lots of money that can throw its weight around. Are you afraid of the political consequences here?
I'm not afraid. And the reason I'm not afraid is I'm more afraid of what happens when we don't stand up to folks like the NCAA or stand up to Disney and what they were doing. Because what do we essentially do is we give over our state. And whatever the NCAA says, or whatever they say in California in a corporate boardroom in a company like Disney or any other company, we have to now adapt our lives as Floridians to the wishes of California executives or NCAA officials, and we're just not going to do it. We represent the people of the state of Florida. We don't represent these companies. We are happy when businesses come here. We're happy that businesses thrive here. We're always ranked top 5 in business climate every year over year. This is a great state to do business, but we're not going to be bullied by corporate boardrooms or by hedge funds who own large stocks in these companies who want to dictate how we run our state. We're just not going to do it.
This is a great point, because I have a lot of friends who have moved to Florida recently. One of my good friends and colleagues, Ben Shapiro, moved to Florida recently, and lots of others have as well, because it's a great business climate and because there's a lot more political freedom there than in other states, particularly the states that some of us have fled, like California. So what you're saying is, look, we're a big, strong state. We've got a lot of leverage here. We've got a lot of power. We're a big act. We're very attractive, and we're going to use that to make sure that we don't let the cart put the cart in front of the horse and let the tail wag the dog, and let these woke corporations actually take us for granted.
Yeah, look, and the reality is it's Florida's leadership style that has benefited companies like Disney. Remember during the pandemic, California wouldn't let them open at all. Out in California, Florida, Disney was open. People were going back to work. Families were coming here. They were spending money. They were staying in hotels. A massive benefit to every company, to every business owner, every child in the state of Florida. But that same freedom that comes from the elected officials who are represented by who represent the people, who make those decisions. It is their decisions. It is the people's decision. It is not the company's decision. So when they want to take that special privilege, power, and platform that they have been given by Floridians, by taxpayers, and then weaponize it and mislead them. Let's be honest. Like this law, where they came out, you saw the statements, Michael. They totally misled the public as to what the law did, and I'm sure they did it for a lot of reasons that had nothing to do with the actual law we passed. But we just can't stand idly by and be threatened by companies or by associations like the NCAA. And I think that Florida is going to be a better place for it if we just send the message, hey, come here, do business here, but don't use your special power and your special privilege to try to reshape Florida or to bully elected leaders. This
is an important message. In a way, you're saying, Disney, help us, help you. Help us and the leadership that we've given you in Florida. Don't squander that and turn it into every woke dystopia, like many of the places that have caused you a lot of grief. So this just happened. We are speaking right now just after the bill passed the Florida legislature. So what was the process for the bill, and what happens now? When does this go into effect?
Yeah, so we'll officially pass it and vote tomorrow. The Senate has, passed the bill, got it over to the House. We'll vote tomorrow. It will pass, Michael, and then it will go to the governor's desk, for his signature, and it would be, effective upon his signature, which I imagine will happen quickly. So, this was a very quick process. We just announced that we were going to do it the other day. I was with the governor. We were signing a higher education bill, which, among other things, made sure that there's, transparency in curriculum, right? Because the same thing that's happening in corporations, we want to make sure that kids, as they enter higher education, know what they're getting into and know what's actually being taught. But when we were signing that bill is when Governor Governor DeSantis, announced that we were going to do this. We've been working together, and we're going to get it done and get it to his desk this week.
So we're going to see this, and I do suspect that, like so many other good ideas that have come out of Florida, you might see other states around the country beginning to adopt similar policies to maybe take away some of those legal special privileges that woke corporations have that they abuse at taxpayer expense.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that other leaders throughout the state, throughout the country, recognize the leadership of Governor DeSantis and the Republican-led legislature in Florida on these issues. And obviously, it's not just related to Disney. I think this is obviously something we've seen play out in corporate America, where a company who makes widgets wants to decide that they want to use whatever power and privileges they have to sort of reshape society in the image of the corporate boardroom, rather than focus on whatever their mission is. And I think, in the state of Florida, we've always taken the approach that we want to be very business friendly. We want to stay out of the way. We want to, get rid of regulation so businesses and innovators and entrepreneurs can thrive. But when you violate that privilege by taking these special privileges, which you should never have gotten to begin with, and weaponize it as a way to mislead the public because some California executive says it was a good idea or the NCAA says it's a good idea, we all lose. I mean, we all lose as a society when we give over what power which should belong to the people to corporate boardrooms. That was never the way that this was intended. This is a newer phenomenon in the last, decade or so, and it's got to stop. And I think the only way it's going to stop is if leaders across the country say, look, we're not going to tolerate it. You make widgets, but don't take your special privileges and weaponize it.
And not only is Disney misleading the public, but Disney is wielding its power to undermine the will of Florida voters, the majority of whom support the parental rights and education bill. The majority of Democrats, even nationally, support the parental rights and education bill. It's not even really close. So what you're having here is not just deception from a major media company, but you're having them wielding power that they've accumulated, by the way, with special privileges in the state, to undermine the will of voters. Absolutely cannot handle that. Last question for you. I know you're very busy. What do you expect Disney and perhaps other people who are affected by this to do next?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do anything next. I think that they're going to go back to the drawing board. I think that they probably realize that, this is not something that they should have gotten involved in, that they shouldn't have taken this special privilege that they had and weaponized it. I think they probably know, although I doubt they'll admit it, that they misled and certainly misread or misled on what the law actually did. So look, what we've seen in the past is, regardless of, political repercussions and what companies want to do, against people who voted a way they didn't want to vote, that's going to happen, Michael. That can happen every year. We haven't governed that way here in the state of Florida, and I think we've been successful because we can make our case directly to the voters and explain why it is we do what we do. And I think to your point earlier, I think that's what we need to see out of our leaders across the country. Luckily, we're blessed with Governor DeSantis, who sort of leads from the front and has been very bold on these issues. So it has allowed us as a legislature to really lean in, and we're going to continue to do that.
Absolutely right. Not only is it the right thing to do, and it is the right thing to do, and it takes guts to do it, but I suspect it's a political winner. I think this is what people want. It's what Republicans want. I think it's what Democrats want. It's just right all around, Speaker Sprowls. People can find you, by the way, if you haven't tuned in already. Check out Speaker Sprowls' podcast, Red, White, and Blue, READ. Great podcast where we talk about books. And yours truly was actually on it not too long ago. You're very busy, so please go out and keep doing great stuff. Speaker Sprowls, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, Michael. Great to be with you. Appreciate it.